Là, il y a les trucs de Infinity Swiss. Infinity Swiss, normalement.
Into a bit of a choke point, and there's really nothing left to be done. It's got the elevation to his favor. He could pretty much do everything that he wanted to at the end.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that was the 1v1 that actually won the game out the victory route. But that quickly, like right before that, where he took out Polo, that was the one that gave him high ground, and I think that that's gave him the advantage over the rest of the lobby for sure.
Yeah, and a key note here, we will not be seeing Nani or Larson. They're done. Yeah. They're going to grand finals. That's it. They do not have to play the next 4 games. Now we have to turn our attention to this top 5 once again. The duels that end in top 5 also go to grand finals happening next week. Look at this. 2 of the duos we talked about at the beginning, right? Blake, Bizzle, we got to talk to Blake. Their focus, Jamper, Paper, another duo we have eyes on, currently sitting just inside that top 5.
There it is. Listen, we talked about it, right? They're back to their setups, right? Back to being comfortable. They have that relationship, that friendship is now built up to that boot camp. And I mentioned, I was like, listen, maybe that's all they needed, right? Go back to those comfortable setups. I think they're going to do well in Surge Week. And right now, top 5 is a good place to be sitting for them.
Especially given the fact that they're
il est déjà 43, 42 points. Et bah dis donc, 44 en moins de 2000. Il a monté de 2 points. Et c'est ça, à chaque fois, les tryharders, les trucs, les machins professionnels, ils portent toujours les mêmes skins. C'est un truc de ouf. Tu vas jamais voir un skin genre de collaboration ou quoi pour un joueur tryharder, quoi. Impossible, jamais.
See so many souls alive in the end game, but them actually being one of the duos that are alive is looking good for the rest of the games, right? Because they have now proven that they can make it to these end games as a duo, whereas some of these other duos, they're just making it as solos, which is why we saw that game kind of fold out like that. So if they can continue to
Et tout ça, ça passe sur Twitch. Bah attends, justement. Je vais Alif ou Aïra. Maintenant, j'ai débloqué le truc.
Yeah. Went into those final zones, but then they kind of was just away.
Polo and Shanye, they definitely, I think, had the right idea with looking for the high ground initially. It's just keep an eye on those builds. That's been the main.
On va pour l'accessoire de dos. Moi, je fais juste ça pour l'accessoire de dos. Le reste, en vrai, je m'en fous, mais complètement.
Exactly. He still did a great job, though, of trying to push through it, despite the fact that he ran out of resources at the end there. I think it's just about pace with how many.
Cool, c'est pour le sac à dos maintenant. Et bah, je vais la garder tout de suite. Et Fancy Wiss.
Shockwave hammer coming from that way and ends up getting taken out as a result of that. So be careful when you're farming those trees in the end game.
Yeah, again, we get it, right? It's very chaotic. This is Surge Week. Anything can and anything will happen. But to your point, right, you have to kind of know, if I want to compete with some of the best, I also have to know how to kind of hang on to my materials and utilize them efficiently.
Yeah, 100%. I want to
regarder directement sur Fortnite.
At the top shot, I was like, listen, when we looking at the CU site, well, really it was like, up, down, up, down, up, down, right? So I'm expecting we'll see that tenfold as the games continue.
And again, I think it's kind of just a testimony to the fact that in Surge Week lobby, it just seems as
Et ça tombe directement sur les defenseless.
Yet for who's actually taking control of the high ground, it's kind of just up for grabs.
Yeah, and really quickly, I did want to touch on the duos there in 4th and 5th, right? Blake, Bizzle, Jamper,
C'est 30 minutes là.
Can they continue this momentum?
Well, that's the crazy thing, right? When we talked to him at the top show, right? We had the interview. He was like, listen, we're going to go for high ground. They didn't do that. We're going to go for the victory route. They didn't do that, right? So I think like everything just fell into their pocket when it comes to that game right there. So maybe now, like if things start to switch up, they start to win more all spawns than they necessarily expected, they could just start playing for that consistency factor.
We'd love to see it. Well, we only have 4 more games left to go here in Surge Week as far as any East is concerned. But guess what? Games are ready to go. And so are we. And we hope you are as well. So let's throw it back into the capable hands of our casters for game number 2.
Great opportunity for so many teams and players to realize what they did right or wrong in that first game and figure out a way to mimic.
Ça va être très beau le sac à dos. Sac à dos et 26. C'est le truc l'intérieur, le monsieur là.
Will they try to mimic some of the success that Larson found in that end game? Well, It's almost time here, folks. We will find out now as we prepare to crown
En
another
attendant,
person that
je vais aller voir encore
advancement
des vidéos
achievement
tranquilles.
onto the grand
J'ai
finals.
coupé la
And the
caméra et
beauty of
tout.
the whole thing here in Surge, because we saw that first team already punch their ticket to the grand finals, and then we saw the lay of the land on that leaderboard at the end of the day. But if a team in first, if a team in second going into that final fifth game ends up with that victory royale, it just pushes everybody up, and somebody's going to get that free spot into the grand finals. Game number 2 is ready, Panda. Let's get this one going.
Let's get this party started. Game number 2 is here, and we're going to be landing, it looks like, with a little contestation. You already know it, folks. The name of the game is these contested POIs, and we love to start landing at one of them right now here. Breakwater Bay. One of my favorite POIs. When this season came out, I was landing here nonstop, so it makes sense that Bobby and his teammate are hanging out.
But back to where we started in that game number 1, Blake and Bizzle contested versus Visuals and Scoped, and both these teams kind of have a little bit of a split up from one another, but Blake having that shockwave hammer early on could be a perfect moment for them to try to pounce on the separated Visuals, and that looks like exactly what they're going to do. They're trying to take advantage of timing, boxes him up, denies him an exit, and already, game after game, the man that said, hey, we might not win off consistency, does it again.
I mean, look, the game plan and strategy here from Bizzle and Blake is perfect. You catch one off guard, and you play close together so that they can't do the same to you. I mean, it's literally flawless, and that's why both Scoped and Visual are down and out here in game number 2.
Hey, he got a second chance here, a great start, and that's what we're talking about, the beauty of Surge Week, 2 different ways to punch your ticket to grands. And right now, even though he said he wasn't going to go through consistency, Blake and Biz are looking like they're playing to both of those ways in. As Polo and Shonye, we've seen them go very, very far in that last game, 80 points. And you can look at the start of this one, even though they're separated, Shockwave Hammer, plenty of shields to work with. Right now, they're just matting up and getting themselves ready for the end game. And you can see they're just now on the edge of zone, which is right above them, which means they have all that real estate to the south to work with.
So much space, and the zone is in their favor, so there is no pressure on their shoulders here in the beginning. But we got to take a quick look here at what is happening over at the tower. Beautiful shots onto Jamper. Jamper exchanges here. Paper gonna go down 1v1, and Kaze actually walks away with the elim onto Jamper.
Wow, that is a way to build your self-confidence and to build momentum, not only taking down a big name, but in a 1v2 fashion. Both of those players got to be living on a high right now as Tenley and Trentman trying to make up for lost time, going down rather early in that game number 1, but Nerf falling down, taking too much damage, eliminates himself essentially. Tenley's going to take advantage, but that turns this one all the way around, leaving his teammate in a 1v2 situation off spawn.
This is a tough spot for his teammate to be in. You see Meatball there just on the back foot, going to try to separate himself away from this area. He needs to, though, but not before taking a few shots there. Onto Tenley, caused a little bit of damage, but looking at that inventory, it don't matter. He's got so many heals to work with, so they can sit here and take these shots all day.
And you even saw Acro in the distance, ready to get his own tags when it comes to Storm Surge, Flowin and Nasen. Another team making it to the very end. This is exactly what you got to do in a lot of these scenarios. You can't let any of the nerves, any of the pressure of a lobby like this get to you. Because at the end of the day, you got to add on to the fact that as soon as you get that Victory Royale, that's one less team to deal with in that lobby. So you got to realize as the day progresses as well, some of these teams that might not be having the best showing off spawn, or some that will, can switch up their draw spot at a moment's notice to something that might be uncontested.
Uncontested. I mean, listen, that doesn't seem to be the story we've seen so far as Costa and Zeus. They had 4 eliminations pretty early last game, but starting a little bit slower here in game number 2, looking to connect with Glace there, just trying to get into the box, trying to play this as effectively as he can, and Glace not taking any chances, says, you know what, I don't want any part of this, I'm getting out.
Yeah, Costa running out of mats and resources, can't really build, can't really go on the chase along with them. And what a switch up from an uncontested drop to one of the most contested ones on the map. And then you even see Lawrence looming in the distance. Everybody really trying to have their game, have their day, but a huge shot. Clay's taking a huge amount of damage. That's Young Monk and George trying to go ahead and break into the box, but Shockwave Hammer sending him sideways. A little get-out-of-jail-free card if you can use it properly. And a huge opportunity to try to get yourself back into the game, but Glaze goes down altogether. That's Tetro who finds a free elimination flying through the sky.
I mean, wow, what shot there from Young Monk. Gonna connect some big things, but you know what? It wasn't enough for him to push. He realizes quickly that there are two teams here, and he cannot overextend because he'll be out quite quickly.
Yeah, especially when you realize the situation, getting the damage. You gotta realize that's a victory in its own mind. One less team to deal with in the lobby, putting you one step closer to that final end game. And as this one does progress, a southern zone means so many teams are going to begin to rotate into this position. So for the teams that actually landed towards faulty splits, you have to start thinking about what is next. One, this starts getting a little contested and congested on this side of the map as Costa and Zeus still hunting for their resources. Plenty of mats, plenty of loot to kind of pick up on this side of the map still, but you got to be careful because there's still so many players sneaking around, waiting for you to forget that they're there.
Waiting games have been a pretty consistent thing we've seen here through these first two games, and this is not going to change here anytime soon. Costa just hanging out. Good play there with the cow catcher. Remember, you throw that down, immediately breaks whatever builds are in front of it. So definitely wise for them to do. Unfortunately, not going to be able to collect on that. Still shows the high level of IQ from the players that we are watching here in this lobby.
And you kind of hear the Falcon Scouts going off as well, kind of shutting down any sneak attempts coming through, spotting out where these players are positioned as Okus and Noxy trying to claim the capture point, get themselves more loot and get themselves information to work with. Figure out, is this something they want to contest? Do they want to continue to go forward or kind of back up, play that longer game? Talked about the north zone being the congested part of the map. Sooner or later, that's going to go ahead and reach in towards Faulty. And that's why you see players like George, players like Young Monk, disengaging from a lot of these fights and trying to farm up. They know timing is of the essence, and it's not on your side if you keep fighting.
It's not. But looking at Palbot, Mythic Munition. Can we talk about this for a second here, Jacob?
Talk about it.
This new augment to the game has been a game changer, man. You part this with some other augments, and you might be doing some serious damage. I mean, look, Palbot understands the value of what he's got here, which is why he is comfortable playing in Storm a little bit and going for this fight. And you see Tenley, Trentman, they actually just got the point. That means Palbot and Cranky are marked. So if they want to continue this game on, they need to get away from this area.
And you got to feel for that third party on the left of Lonely Labs, trying to sneak up. Probably get some surge tags of its own, but you talked about them getting marked. He kind of got marked as well as Palbot and Cranky, trying to continue their rotation. We talked about a full pull on the zone. If you don't get going quick and it pulls one more time towards the south, that's going to be a nightmare that I don't want to face as Flowen and Nasen doesn't have to face that same nightmare because they prepared up until this point. Kelly, how is their preparation led up to this side?
Well, we already saw a great performance from them last game, getting that second place, and they seem to be having a great start in this game as well, and that's due to their augment Aerialist. With that split drop, they tend to have a little less loot, but the Aerialist allows them to be able to rotate far away and use that mobility that they need to have to get all the loot that they need. Back to you guys.
I'm going to be honest, Aerialist is probably my favorite movement this season. I know a lot of people lean towards the hammer, but the hammers are pretty tough to find. It's not guaranteed at any of these drops here as you play. So as far as augments go, Aerialist is definitely in the A category, or maybe even the S category for me. But for players like Sinks and Blue, they may prioritize some other things.
What I like about the Aerialist, when we're thinking about Surge Week and kind of pairing them together, that could be a team that we really see threatened for the high ground. Use a little bit of mats and resources and bait somebody up because they could just abandon that right away and use their areas to get out. As Sen and Gary trying to go ahead and position themselves towards the slower side of zone. We talked about it pulling to the south. It's pulled towards the east as well. So that's where they're going to see the least amount of congestion That's even if they want it, because, you know, Storm Surge is going to be a huge factor in this game as Snake and Redux, we saw them in Game 1 prepare for Storm Surge. Did they prepare enough here as you see them stacked up in a position where not only those team is right above them, but there's still 3 more, even a 4th towards the bottom in the distance.
Shots looming in. I gotta say, look, these teams are spending an awful lot of time on the outside of zone for my comfort. I mean, you got to start moving here at some point, and I think Skizzy and Cyrex are going to be one of those teams to do it. But before they do, they want to make sure they get those much-needed surge tags. And honestly, smart position for them to do it. They realize there's going to be several teams here on the outskirts of zone, everybody rotating in from the storm. They're going to take advantage of any players that are close, because guess what? High ground, even in the early game, is a huge advantage to have.
Through the early game, mid-game, end game, that high ground that terrorizes anybody below is not necessarily prepared as Young Monk and George. You can see they already got that 1 elimination. You saw how dangerous Storm Surge was before. We've seen 2 eliminations on players. We've seen 3 eliminations on players, and they're still below the damage threshold. And so you could see them just preparing, getting the resources, the hard match, the brick, and the metal, because they know if they become the focus of the lobby, they need something tough to defend themselves.
What can defend? I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. There's been some items added this season that honestly I expected more usage, and we haven't seen it. One of those things is the Guardian Shield, and you're talking about playing defensively. That bad boy is so nice to have. You throw it down, you can protect yourself from being focused across the lobby and so on. But no, Costa actually going to take quite a bit of damage. Tetro going to clean it up there with Zoxy, and man, that is a loss here.
That's just an unfortunate series of events. Costa trying to scavenge, sneak around, and he doesn't even look towards his left. That was a surprise attack as Fred Craze trying to go ahead and surprise Plaren Bobby as Plarero's going to already go down. Bobby running for his life, 168 above the damage threshold. They just want to secure this elimination so that way they can get the siphon, get more underneath their belt that they can work with later in the game. And that one's not only going to be secured, but it's going to be grabbed and snatched up as 2 more players are beginning to go ahead and close the distance. That's Craze and Fredbot versus Zypha and Shore. They all know each other's here, so it's about paying attention to where that rotation is going to come through at.
It definitely is, but if anybody knows how to rotate here from a situation like this, it is Zypha. Zypha, veteran pro player, been around for quite some time. One of those people that truly understands the game on such a high level. That's why we consistently see his name in Surge Weeks or in finals. He is one of those players that just makes it to these high-level events, but lots of shots raining in, lots of pressure coming in, so who knows if they're going to be able to get into the zone.
Yep, we see Naves just boxing up on the Bush. Bush Warrior Augment playing a role, only popping 1 mini, just a little bit of a cushion just in case the pressure kept gumming, but he realized the shots had stopped, so he's kind of letting the Augment do its work before it begins to peak yet again. 160 above the damage threshold for him and Aaron. Their only worry is trying to reunite, get together again, so they can finish this game as a duo. We talked about early on the zone continuing to move towards the south, continuing to move towards the east. It almost looks like only 2 teams are in the zone, a 3rd player of a 3rd team. Everybody's going to have to pick and choose this rotation perfectly because everything's going to be laid on the line next.
I mean, looking at the way these players are fighting, this is one crazy lobby. The pressure coming in from every single angle. Doesn't matter if you're in zone, out of zone. If you're a player that's played forever or not, you are not safe here because the fighters are out and they are looking to collect on any eliminations that they can find along the way.
And you can see Nawson and Flo right next to Mikey and Smacked. This is going to be one of the most sought-after rotation spots right here for anybody else trying to find their spot in zone, high up on the mountain. They might try to use that elevation to their advantage, use the cover, go directly next to it so that way they don't get tagged up from above. But everybody trying to find that sweet spot in zone is going to have to look to either go through them or somewhere else altogether. There's Narwhal and Nexi might be one of those teams, 187 above the damage threshold, but you could look at their inventory right now. They've been sent through the ringer and back, but this is how players get tested. This is how players build that confidence game after game.
Confidence That's a powerful word here, but Bucky losing some confidence here as he's gone down. Lawrence exchanging very, very well, though. Could he clean this up? Lawrence on the back foot is going to need to use these heals quickly. Bucky's still in this as well. They're going to exchange. Super smart play from both teams. They realize that if they want to remain in this game and could potentially walk away with a VR, they have to stop and they have to heal.
Yeah, and it looks like the double res is going to come off, and if only Aviv and User just spotted that in the distance, they could have ended one duo's run or potentially half of it. And you can see Flo and Nasa don't like the position they're in as more and more players begin to come in from the north side. It's going to make it too congested, too stacked. They're looking to kind of rotate sooner rather than later, but you can see they're just trying to reload all their weapons, get ready for what's to come, because as soon as they launch themselves to the sky, the shots are going to come in.
Yeah, listen, it was a smart play for them to move, but because they were the first players to hammer, you immediately saw everybody open up edits and look. That is a dangerous play to make here in a situation like this. You have to be cautious because that hammer is loud. So if you're the first one to rotate when there's not a lot else going on, the focus will all be on you.
Got the double user duo boxed up, parallel to Oliver and Jeff. This is one of the duo. I love watching Oliver OG compete. Meeting him in person was just a blessing of my own. I would love to see him qualify to grand finals along with Ace and Jeff. Can they get there? That's going to be the big thing. They have chemistry, but they need to be able to pull it together in terms of consistency or just getting that victory royale at the end of the day. And you got to imagine with not a lot of rotation on Oliver, just one shadow bomb to work with, the pressure coming in from the distance, they are going to be tested.
The mind of Oliver OG is a unique one. He is such a talented player, and honestly, he can position his team correctly. When they are in sync, him and Jeff, anything is possible. Just like Cranky and Palbot here, anything is possible. Unfortunately, Pal does have a few eliminations, but lacking in the material category. That mythic pistol has been put to work, and now he's added that Thunder shotgun. Man, this lobby needs to start looking out.
You can only imagine Bucky and Lawrence probably still fishing for jellyfish with the jelly angle or augment. If they leave any behind, that's going to be a huge amount of loot for somebody to get, but still another Eastern moving zone for the teams that thought they were comfortable on the south side. They thought it couldn't move anymore. It's going to force them to rotate yet again. Mikey and Smack, they don't got much to move through. That's where they're going to pick and choose, probably rotate towards that last moment. When push comes to shove, they can stagger themselves, get there with the shockwave hammer at the end of the day. Just anybody's going to contest them, try to stop them. As Bizzle and Blake, we saw them kind of win off spawn rather easily against scope and visuals. 297 above the damage threshold. Whether if it's a victory royale or consistency, they're looking strong game after game.
Yeah, their game plan is solid as a rock, and that's why we see them moving their way up potentially to the first spot on the leaderboard. A lot of the top 5 teams that we saw coming into this game are out. Only a few left here as we see Blake and Bizzle, one of them. Can they remain, though? That's the question. As players like Redux and Snake look to get away with it. They want to win. They don't want to let Blake and Bizzle do well. They don't want to let Nazin and his teammate find success. No, they want to be the ones that are going to the grand finals.
Yeah, hopefully everybody's preparing accordingly. You look at the zone right now, you got a river right in the middle. 2 different elevations on either side. If you don't have a shockwave hammer, if you don't have any sort of rotation, you better hope that you have resources and mats, because it is going to get tough moving from point A to point B at a moment's notice. With so many other players being able to gatekeep and hold you out. So this next zone where it pulls 50-50, and you can see it pulling again towards that northeastern portion of the map. Only 3 teams safe at the moment. This is what I came to see in Surge Week, actually.
I'm going to be honest. I'm looking at this map, and I'm thinking no one has that forecast augment. Listen, there is not there's what, 1 person, 2 people right there in the zone. So players are going to start moving here shortly. And with the way that these elevations kind of slip down into the water, they're going to have to be super careful. But the fights are on here in the final moments as Oliver OG and Jeff just hold on by a string.
Yep, using the last of their heals. They have to go in. It's now or never. This is a moment I came to see, and that's not what you wanted or expected to happen, as Tetron's Epoxy taking huge advantage. That's a huge boost of confidence for them as well. They got the refresh. It wasn't a ton, right? But at this stage in the game, towards moving zones, anything is better than nothing. And they immediately try to shockwave hammer and get there first. As the zone moves uphill, you don't want to be the last team standing behind.
You definitely don't, but I gotta say this, Tetro and Zoxy going to play as a confident duo. 6 eliminations shows me that it doesn't matter who pops in their box, whether it's Oliver OG and Jeff or Blake and Bizzle, they're ready to fight.
Ready to fight anybody that crossed their paths, but what I like about that as well is they know when to pick and choose said battles. That looks like George ends up in the wrong box trying to make a move. Tetra almost landing a huge shot, but you can see him picking and choosing what we were just talking about, using the brain instead of the brawn to try to keep himself safe for these later zones. Mikey's going to go down. He's going to get knocked. Smack's going to have to work hard to really save the day. Ascent and Gary have the high ground for now. And I say for now, because it's only 5th zone. We haven't even started moving yet. And you know how destructive those shockwave hammers could be to high ground.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. If you're trying to take high ground before probably 8th zone, you're not holding it. I mean, the shockwave hammers have changed the way high ground is played, and only a few teams have really found out how to play it. But one of those teams is still in this lobby. It is Bizzle and Blake. This duo knows how to play any kind of situation that we've seen here in Chapter 4.
Yeah, and they found that elimination on to Smack, bringing their total of 3. Since the beginning of the game to now, you got to imagine, at the very minimum, staying above that Storm Surge threshold, only having to worry about rotation after rotation. Once more, as it begins to pull, you can see they're immediately trying to stay towards the front side. That way, they can stagger themselves back, build themselves a little bit of a cushion, and kind of do what they want because they have those shockwave hammers to do it yet again. Tetra and Epoxy following close behind, but just a layer above. You can't get congested this stage of the game with everybody going down at a moment's notice.
It is all down to this here. Tetro, Zoxy, Epoxy going to do what they can to stay alive here as players like Seek and Cooper. We talked about them in the pre-show there, and our beautiful analyst broke it down exactly how it should. This duo is a force to be reckoned with, and considering they are still alive in this lobby, anything goes.
Yep, Tetra and Epoxy have high ground for now, putting some shots. You got Sabzi going down, Crisp as well. Tetra and Epoxy trying to build up, put the pressure down, but only so much you could do with a red eye. But they have the high ground. That's going to be the important part. Waiting for where that next zone is going to pull. You see a couple players getting knocked as well. As Epoxy and Tetra doing what they can, but they see where zone's going to go. They can stagger themselves back, let another team build up, and try to steal away. As Nair and Naves, they have the low ground, trying to look back, take a team out. They're not going to land the shots that they wanted, but they realize that backside of zone is all theirs.
Wow, looking at how congested this endgame is going to be a tough one for the players that remain. But big shot comes in for Aaron, cleans it up here with his duo, Nave, and they are still in this. Shockwave hammer comes out, and now they are ahead of zone. This is a great layer for them to be in, but they should not be spending this much time in Storm.
Yep, luckily for him, though, he does have that med miss in his back pocket, ready to heal. If he could just find a moment to stabilize, he's going to need Flow to make that happen. Just like Nastin just going to the front side of zone, leading the charge, trying to go ahead and make the edit happen. Meanwhile, high ground's being fought for. It was Rhythms for a moment, but his zone continues to run. He has now have to challenge Tetra for it if he does want it, not builds to work with. He goes down. He lost his teammate early on. They're going to have to try again in Game 3.
Look, I told you, I literally said it moments ago. If it's not Zone 8, don't go for height. You can't do it because it is a struggle. But for Aviv and User, they're still in it. Blake Bizzle still in it. 3 eliminations here on the board. And now Blake needs to heal up. Bizzle as well. Not necessarily in the healthiest conditions, but they are still in it. That's all that matters. You just need a chance given to Blake and Bizzle, and they will walk away with it.
Yep. Seek needs that same chance. Losing Cooper along the way. Knows one player's behind him. That's Crank. He tries to get the shot before the shockwave hammer comes to fruition. Not going to peek. Opportunity goes out the window, but it's Blake on high ground. But Bizzle gets eliminated. Blake, if he wants that victory royale, if he wants that ticket to the finals, he has to dig deep. Getting chopped all the way down, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. 20 HP, no build, 3 eliminations, trying to find his way in the zone. He cannot take a damage, and he somehow figure out a crevice to live, a crevice to survive, but there's one player right below. Blake, he's going to go and take the bait. Almost gets shockwave out around his zone. I don't know how he's surviving. He's living on a prayer.
Living on a prayer, but he is one of the most consistent duos. Despite him going down, this is still going to be great points for the leaderboard. As we continue on, though, Okus holding on as a solo, 60 effective HP on him. And there is so much happening, and unfortunately, it's going to be it for him as Epoxy is still in it. Tetro is out, but he does get a knock.
Epoxy is going to be one of the last solos in the game as Aaron and Nave go down. 1v2 situation. Nasen and Flo versus Epoxy. If at first you don't succeed, you try again, but a challenge for the high ground is going to ensue. He gets denied in his first opportunity, so Epoxy now has to rethink the situation. If he has no mats, it could be game over. Shockwaving from one side of the zone to the other, trying to think outside of the box, but it's not enough. With 5 eliminations, Nasen and Flo just booked their ticket to Grands.
Look, if you couldn't rate them before, you gotta rate this duo now because they booked their ticket to the grand finals, and what a way to do it. Pure control from Zone 9 on. Nasen and his duo. Good luck.
Picking and choosing. When is that perfect moment to go for the high ground? You called it yourself. Too soon, everything will come crumbling down. They perfected it. Both players from high ground to low ground. You can see that elimination onto Aaron, and that was the moment right there. You see him building up and taking over the rest of the game.
Like I said, man, you just can't take height too early, and Nasen understood that. That's why you see them hold it down, 2 hammers in the inventory, and they finish it strong.
You can see the celebration. The job is done. He's realizing everything that's just happened. He has a chance to call himself an FNCS Major 1 champion that he has to battle through next week. We got 2 winners after 2 games that are probably living on a high at this point.
Honestly, if I'm Nasen or Flo, I'm calling Mom. I'm being like, look, Mom, I booked my way to grand finals, baby. I'm going for that big money because that was a great way to finish it, and what a deserving team.
Yeah, couldn't think of anybody else through that different stages of the game that fought tooth and nail to earn that shot. And that's what everybody else is going to be fighting for, who is still playing for that leaderboard spot. Zeke and friends, who are those players?
We got you covered, Jacob PR. Thank you so much for casting the first 2 games. We got, of course, 3 more to go. But, hey, for Nasen, for Flo, they were going with it. Going to Flo, get it? I don't know what I'm just making the dad jokes today. I don't know what's going on. I'm excited about Surge Week. But once again, congratulations to the duo. What's crazy, these guys actually came in, because remember, top 5 will go through. They came in second place, decided, you know what? We don't need top 5. Let's get a VR.
I mean, listen, VRs are the name of the game today, right? But I mean, Nasen just showing consistency along with that, getting second place in that first game, following it up very, very quickly with a victory royale in game number 2. And honestly, that game right there was a little bit more duos focused, right? We had 3 duos in the end right there, but Nasen and Flo were just in a much better situation. As soon as they realized that it was a 2v1 situation, immediately took the high ground. I mean, look at the maps. There's no way there was any chance this solo clutch was going to happen here, and they just cleaned it up. Very, very well job done by them.
Hey, if at first you don't succeed, well, normally it's try and try again, but in their instance, it was only try one more time. But I think it's also kind of a shout out to a little bit of that mental fortitude as well, because it's not easy when you come in second place for game number 1 to then have a repeat performance and actually get a VR outright. I think it's definitely a clear indicator. This is a team that's definitely going to be fun to follow along with in grand finals.
Yeah, and I like that point, too, kind of that follow-up, right? Because once again, we talk about momentum. You got to start strong to try and make that top 5. But again, if you just get a victory out back-to-back, that is where you want to be. We take a look at our new top 5. Blake, Bizzle, they're moving on up in the world.
I don't even know how you come into like Surge Week, right? And you're like, listen, we're going to go for the VR, we're going to go for high ground, and then just like, well, actually, we did see Blake up on the high ground, but he was as a solo. They're just consistently making the end game right now, and shout out to them all, Spawn, because right now their strategy is way better. They're getting priority over those Oathbound chests when it comes to visuals and scope. And, you know, this game we saw it very, very early on. They just straight up use those shockwave hammers to take the fight to them and clean them up very, very early on. So 2-0 for them off spawn, and they're doing a great job leading into the end game because of that.
And granted, it was a little bit unfortunate that Blake did end up losing Bizzle later on, but I think he still did a great job of maintaining that solo clutch opportunity in order to be able to maintain them in the top 5 of the leaderboards. And again, like you just said, Vivid, even though they're looking for the Victory Royale to send them through immediately, they can still take placing off of consistency.
They're just so good, right? They can do it both. They can look for something else and then still do good at something else. So they just got it all.
That's why we were focused on them, right? Another duo we talked about at the very beginning, Seek and Cooper, currently sitting in that third place spot, right? Just so this is why we're like following these specific duos, right? They're just so dang good.
Yeah, listen, I'm impressed, right? Because I mentioned it, a lot of their Storm Surge strategies when it came to those weekly finals appearances was just based off of off-spawn confrontation, but they don't necessarily have that today. They've still done a good job of making these end games and getting into that top 5 today.
Hey, the name change says it all here. Siku for Shores. It is obvious how much confidence this duo has, I think, landing at Slappy Shores at Southside. And just the fact that they clearly do know how to move through those late game aspects. But I think especially given the fact that they're uncontested now, they're still not having any sort of struggles in terms of managing their surge throughout. So I think that this is a duo that they're probably just going to keep overtaking on Slappy Shores.
Yeah, and really quickly, I actually want to touch on a POI. We watched Nani and Larson win game 1, which meant they now opened up that POI. Because remember, they don't have to play any more games. They're already in grand finals, which actually opened up another duo an opportunity to land in their POI.
Yeah, it's going to be Oliver and Jeff, right? They were contested in game number 1, but because, as Zeke mentioned, Larson and Smite, they won game number 1, right? Well, they're out of the competition. They're going straight in the grand final. So wherever they are landed now is open up. So if we take a look at Oliver and Jeff's game number 2, where they landed, they just went ahead and stole that drop spot from them, and now they're landing there and they're uncontested, which was very beneficial coming into this game.
Yeah, as soon as Nani and Larson moved out of Meadow Mansion, we just see Oliver and Jeff immediately move right into that vacancy. But one thing to keep note of is that even though they managed to have a slightly better go in game number 2 because they were eliminated as the third duo in the first match, they play slightly better in game 2, but at the same time, they definitely struggle with surge. So being uncontested, I like the fact that they're prioritizing resources now, but they also need to make sure that they're maintaining their surge management as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, switching your drop spot up is very, very tough. So I'm sure as these games go on, we'll actually just see them continuously place higher and higher because they'll get more used to it. But that's the name of the game, right? Every single time a team gets that VR, they're out of the competition. So as these games go on, all of those spots are going to keep opening up, and the lobby itself is just going to keep changing.
Adaptability. That is what Fortnite competitive is all about. Being able to identify in the moment. This is something that could lead us to grand finals. And for some of these duos, they're capitalizing on those things, right? With only a handful of games left to go. You guys have eyes on maybe something specific we should be looking forward to?
Who's going to take over Nasen and Flo's, job spot, right? Who's going to land there now? We'll have to see.
Maybe a little bit of third time's the charm instance for Blake and Bizzle here. I'm kind of seeing the Victor Royale, maybe.
3-0 would be a tough one for Visuals and Scope to come back from.
We'll have to see, but guess what? We don't have to wait any longer because game number 3 is ready to go. So let's jump right back into the action here in Surge Week.
It is time here. Game number 3. Two teams have booked their ticket to the finals. Those grand finals. But 3 more opportunities remain.
Yep.
Will we see one of those teams we expect to move, like Paper Jamper, Bizzle Blake, or will we see a new team come in and steal one of those VRs and one of those places in grand finals away? I'm excited. It is almost time. Game 3, here we go.
And the interesting thing is that we kind of progress throughout the day, and we see our top 5 on the leaderboard, right? Top 5 also earns you that spot in the grand finals. But if any of those players get the Victory Royale, that opens up a spot, and game number 3 is ready. And we've seen how a lot of these teams get proactive right out of the gate. You have a good early game that leads to a good mid game that leads to the best potential to take it all in the end.
Yeah, so much potential on this map yet to see. Now look, I'm going to be honest with you. You're looking at these teams landing at Breakwater Bay yet again. Neither of them found the success they were looking for, right? We watched them in game number 2 off spawn. While they didn't fight necessarily off the rip, neither of them, unfortunately, were able to use this POI to do the big things that they wanted to do. But one of those early fights that we did tune in looks to be changing now. Bizzle does pick up scopes, but both Blake and Bizzle struggling with health. Not too much on them as they get ready to take this fight with Visuals.
Just dissecting this duo game after game. This is a little bit of a nightmare going down right before our very eyes for Scoped and Visuals. He needs to wake up from this dream, and he doesn't let that happen. Blake and Bizzle are just on a roll, on another level coming into Surge Week. And that's the thing. Blake, a top competitor. We've already seen him at the top of the leaderboard before. Bizzle, I mean, what can be said about that man that hasn't been said a million times already? We know what they can do. Can they solidify it within the next couple of games? Aaron and Naves, 132 points, jumping up so many spots after that last game. You gotta have that feeling of confidence, like, hey, even if we don't get that Victory Royale, we're still gonna qualify through consistency.
And you got to respect it, right? Like, these players, especially the ones we're seeing in the top 5 right now, while they are playing for the VR, they're finding success in that consistency. So, listen, if I'm Aaron and Dave and I get the VR, great. But I know I'm at the top of the leaderboard, so I'm just going to be paying very, very close there on that. But that off-spawn engagement with Bizzle and Blake and Paper and Jamper, these two continue to surprise us here. Will Jamper hold on to it, though? Losing a teammate is no easy task, especially with Drizzle there in the distance. You see the exchange come through, and Drizzle cleans it up again. Unfortunate there for Jamper and Paper.
Bro, I'm taking him to play darts with me. He was on the money. He hit the bullseye, 170, quickly switches to his tactical pistol and just finishes the job. They get their Storm Surge early because you got to remember Jamper and Paper, or at least Jamper, was shielded up. So that is at least maybe 200 to 300 Storm Surge to start the game off. So now they can focus on their rotations, getting to as close to the center of zone as possible. And you got to realize, what did that do to their augment choices? Because they're able to rotate quickly, they may be able to bypass going for something like Forecast, which you keep mentioning.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I feel like we haven't seen teams utilize Forecast. So with those new augments and changes to that augment as well, I feel like a lot of players are prioritizing other things, especially with the Mythic Munition, Pistol Amp, and so many other incredible augments in the game. It's tough to kind of choose which one you're going to use.
Hopefully this time around, Nerf can choose to play a little safer. We saw him go down to himself, fall damage, and that was Trentman and Tenley's revenge after game number 1. At the end of the day, you can see they're still trying to go for that capture point, and it does look like their duo that ran away, Meatball and Nerf, are just kind of going to give it up, realizing, hey, if they capture this point, they're going to spot us out anyway, so might as well keep it going. And you can see that team towards the south, Panda. They're probably just waiting for this battle to break out, go for surge tags, and as soon as they see nothing, they're probably just going to keep their rotations going as well.
I believe that team is Palbot and his duo. I think they continue to play this edge, look for the shots on the Tenley where they can, and try to play from there. But, I mean, honestly, smart play on their part. Cooper, though, smart play indeed. Look, honestly, if you're Seek and Cooper, you don't want to spend time in Slappy Shores. I'm going to be real with you. You want to loot up, get out, and keep going. And fortunately for them, they were able to do that. But unfortunately, if you look at that map, there's another team looming in their rotation path, and sure enough, Seek identifies it, gets some shots off, and is going to continue moving forward.
You say unfortunate, they say fortunate enough. I'm going to get my serves one way or another. As Seek and Cooper biding their time, playing patient, they're already in zone. They have plenty of metal because they landed towards Slappy Shores. And so the opportunity is theirs. You can see him with a slap barrel, just kind of getting as much HP and shield as possible, popping the big pot. And now he has a little bit extra rotation underneath his belt as we switch on over towards Faulty Splits. Costa losing his teammates. Jylix using him as well. 2v1 situation for both of these duos if they want to stay in that position. And it doesn't look like Jylix does.
He's moving, though. Moving towards the zone, or staying in the zone, rather, and just getting away from that fight. Faulty Splits, while you can split it, there's a lot of teams in this area, so you need to be super careful, especially when you're down a teammate. And that's what we see coming from Jylix as players like Smacked and Mikey join the fold. They have the high ground position here on the hill. They're just waiting for players like Costa or Mason to just expose themselves just for a moment so they can strike when the iron is hot.
Ooh, Falcon Scout ruining every plan that anybody can have at hiding. As you see Costa getting spotted out. Sees Mason closing the distance. Quick piece control, quick edit to try to fire the shot. Not going to get landed. Even Costa fighting for more. Going to trade shots. His shield's no more. The bait and switch comes through. And that was played to perfection by Glace and Mason. If you need a lesson on how to bait and switch to make sure you both stay healthy, make sure you clip that one.
Yeah, I got to see it from Mason's angle, because look at how slippery he was. Jumps forward, slides up the ramp, takes the elimination, and cleans that up quite nicely. And all while using the Slurp Juice. I feel like we haven't talked about this enough. That Slurp Juice coming back into the game has been a huge addition here this season.
Yeah, I think you don't see it too much because of the chug splashes, the chili chug splashes. Instant heals will always be just a little bit better, but in moments like this, or even on rotation, if I see one laying on the ground, I'm going to pop it even if I am full health, because if I do get tagged up along the way, it's going to regenerate as I reach my final destination, as Woozy and Scold trying to get as much shields and HP as possible. And you can see those extra splashes. They're just going to try to use them up so that way he can get the weapons back in his inventory. Blake and Bizzle looming in the distance. That's not a team that I want to face on their hot streak so far.
Speaking of teams potentially on a hot streak is Palbot and his duo here in Cranky. Ether, Cranky. Looking at the way that they are set up quite nicely, finding themselves in the top 5 here in consistency. This is a team we have to pay closer attention to. I feel like we talked about them a little bit in the beginning, but realistically, they're not getting the love they need because that is a duo to be reckoned with.
This is, talk about duos not to be reckoned with. Seek and Cooper. We've seen so many duos set themselves up for a great game, and they have great loot, but Kelly, how are these players getting such fantastic loot?
Thank you so much, Jacob. Kelly Link back here again, everyone. With Chapter 4, we've seen a lot of new things. A new map, new weapons, new augments, and also a new mechanic to the game, claiming POIs, which we are seeing Cooper doing right here, right now, as well as now doing Tinley is doing the same thing. By claiming these POIs, they not only get much needed weapons, but also heals and a little bit of awareness, seeing if there's anyone else around them on the map. Back to you guys.
Great usage of the POI. Listen, the players that identify and understand how to use their POI to their advantage and in the best way are the ones that are going to succeed. So, honestly, we have to pay close attention to whether or not they will be able to, despite them being heavily contested in the area of the northern map, as we've seen. They definitely could be a duo to watch, but a duo that we definitely need to pay close attention to. It is Polo and Sean Yi. They have been doing big things here since game 1. They find themselves in 6th going into this game, so not necessarily into the top 5, but right outside. That means they're still contenders left in this game.
Hey, if they finish game number 5 in 6th place, and anybody in the top 5 win that final game, that earns them a spot into the finals. We've seen it in seasons past. And one of the more prominent names as well that's already got their position in the grand finals. Pamsu and Fats did that exact same thing. They got the qualification because another team won that victory at the end of the day. As Sinks in blue, huge tags on some players into the distance. You can see the Pilly's plunder in his inventory, and Kelly broke it down. One way to get loot is through the capture points. Well, guess what? Augment and Peely's plunder is another way.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, man. That Peely's plunder, it's probably one of the few excuses I'll allow for them to be in Storm. That thing is powerful. And when you open it and you get 2 legendary Thunder shotguns, there's honestly not many other better feelings here when it comes to Fortnite, because that thing is beautiful to have, but looking at inventories that aren't necessarily as beautiful to have.
Ah ouais, quand même, il est déjà à 128 points. C'est des monstres. On va dégager ça. Normalement, on a l'accessoire à tout. Ah, quel nouveau skin est sorti. Cool. Mais par contre, c'est qui serait... Wow, c'est magnifique. What? C'est pio. Je sais même pas ce qui est ça. Ok. Pas mal de retours de skin sans plastique. Qu'est-ce que c'est? C'est sorti au chapitre 2, saison 3. Ça me dit rien du tout. Honnêtement, ça me dit rien. Ça va le finir demain. Et j'ai toujours pas reçu le... Oh, ça passe bien. L'accessoire de tout, je devrais censé le recevoir bientôt. On va aller sur ce nouvel monde vite fait. Alors, sauver le monde. Alors, un petit sauver le monde. Là. Allez, c'est parti. 2 jours, je récupère 150 du PEX. 50, 2 fois 60, d'accord. C'est quoi ça? On va remplacer ça. Tranquille, c'est 3 fois 60, ça va.
Au moins, il n'y aura pas de surprise.
Je le possède. Ouais. Ça. Ouais. Par contre, ce que je ne possède pas, mais je sais pas, c'est de la go. Je dois faire des missions. Ça, je vais par comment. Ok. Bon, je vais arrêter le live. Je vais peut-être redémarrer le jeu pour voir. Normalement, de toute façon, savoir le sac à dos. Je vais faire une petite vidéo vite.